Welcome back to the channel, everyone. I want to get one thing out of the way first. I literally love the Nintendo Switch. Okay, I love the Nintendo Switch and I love the Nintendo Switch Lite. I know it might seem like when I'm doing comparisons or when I'm doing like still worth it videos, it might seem like I hate on the Switch or Switch Lite if you watch those videos, but if you look at every single one of my videos, I literally poke jabs at every single device I review because that's kind of like what the review process is. But it's kind of funny that people on the Nintendo Switch videos tend to say more things than like on my like iPhone 6s videos, something like that, but it is what it is. You guys are beautiful people and I love the feedback, but in order for me to show you guys that I actually love the Nintendo Switch and the Nintendo Switch Lite, I wanted to do a comparison in 2020. I know the Switch Lite has only been out for a couple months, but I wanted to do a quick comparison between both of these devices and see which one you should pick up. You know, whether you should save $100 and pick up the Nintendo Switch Lite, or you should spend the extra $100 and get the Nintendo Switch, the standard one. And now that we're still a couple months into this life cycle, like I said before, used prices of these things haven't really gone down too much, which is probably the bigger thing. Whenever I'm doing an updated review or updated comparison or whatever, I love to see the decline in prices that both of these devices have depreciated since, and in this case, like I stated, they really haven't gone down. They've been about that same price since they first started. So the Nintendo Switch Lite, as I said, started off with $200 price tag. I looked on eBay, some of them are selling for like $180, some of them like $175, but for the most part they're all selling for about that $200 price tag. You can save about $10-20, but with tax you're probably going to end up being at that $200 price tag, which isn't that bad for a device that can still play all those Nintendo Switch games, which is really cool, versus the Nintendo Switch that costs $300. And as of right now, as I've been making this video, I still have trouble finding ones that are less than like 250. Maybe I found one that was like 220-ish, but for the most part they're all still around that same price tag that they're at for the most average of them. I mean, if you look through hard enough, maybe you'll find some that are like 150 for the Switch Lite, or maybe like 200 for the Switch, but again, it's all based on the quality and everything like that. So in terms of the depreciation that both of these devices have seen, we really haven't honestly seen too much on both of them, which isn't that big of a deal, but that is honestly one huge thing to consider if you're going to pick up a used or even a brand new Nintendo Switch or Nintendo Switch Lite. Now that we have that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about some of the more standard stuff between them. Now looking at the front, obviously you're going to see that the Nintendo Switch standard one is much bigger than the Nintendo Switch Lite, and when you hold them side by side, I think that the regular Nintendo Switch feels about like half the size a little bit as the Nintendo Switch, or the Switch Lite feels about half the size as the regular Nintendo Switch. And you know, it's up to you whether you like that or not. I don't really think there's a humongous issue with the, you know, the weight of both of these. One of them is smaller, so it's not like one is super heavy compared to the size, but some people might like that bigger screen size on the Nintendo Switch. So you have a 5.5 inch panel on the Nintendo Switch Lite, where you have a 6.2 inch panel on the Nintendo Switch. Now honestly, when I say those two numbers, it might seem like it's not that big of a deal, or they're very small, but there is quite a bit of difference in the screen sizes, if I'm being honest. The Nintendo Switch Lite has a really good panel too, and maybe I was too hard on it the first time, but it's a pretty good panel. There's really nothing in me that makes me want to like hate on it or anything. Like it's a pretty good panel at the end of the day, but I still feel like the bigger panel on the Nintendo Switch kind of speaks to me more. I really do like the, you know, Nintendo Switch, both of them, but I really do like those bigger screens, and I tend to side more with those ones than on the smaller screen. So just for me, I would probably end up picking up the Switch just because of the panel itself and the biggerness of it and the size of it, not necessarily the quality. As far as I know now, and I was, you know, brought up to the fact that the Nintendo Switch Lite and the Nintendo Switch both have the same resolution panels, even though the Switch Lite looked a little bit off to me sometimes, I guess I can't argue with facts there, so I'll side with the Switch Lite having the same resolution. So that's a really cool thing, right? But the big thing is, while we're looking at the front, the Joy-Cons of both these, they obviously have different inputs for the controls and everything. With the Switch Lite, we have pretty much the same basic capabilities, you know, like the Nintendo DS or the Wii U or the PlayStation P or whatever, PlayStation Portable. I said that's so weird. The controls are built into the system themselves, and that's not necessarily a problem most of the time. You know, I have my like PSP 1000 to 3000 on my PSP Go and PS Vita. Those work perfectly fine. There's really no buttons that do not work, and those consoles are pretty old for this day and age. The Nintendo Switch Lite came out in 2019, so this one we should expect to have less problems, right? But not necessarily the case. You know, even with the Nintendo Switch, these Joy-Cons on these consoles have the tendency of drifting all over the place. So my blue Nintendo Switch actually has this issue. My Switch Lite has not gotten this issue yet, but that doesn't mean it won't get in the future. And what this basically means is that those Joy-Cons will pretty much get stuck in one place, and your character or your controllers or whatever will constantly shift in that direction sometimes. Now, it's not an everyday thing, it doesn't happen all the time, but sometimes it's like it's almost like every time I mess with it, at least on my Nintendo Switch, the Joy-Con somehow registers that it's always going one place or another, and that's a really annoying thing. But here's the thing, with the Nintendo Switch, the standard one, at least we're able to go and, remove those Joy-Cons and then, connect other ones if these ones get broken. And, like I said, and it's a very common problem. A ton of people run into this issue all the time. Whereas on the Nintendo Switch Lite, we can't really go and, replace these controllers. We can take apart the, console and then replace the controllers that way. That requires a ton of work. For the majority of people, I'm sure they would rather just disconnect their Joy-Cons and put them in. And honestly, I have a theory. I think Nintendo does this on purpose, so then we go get new Joy-Cons. That's just a theory. I don't have any way to back that up. That's just my opinion. Don't sue me, Nintendo. But with the Nintendo Switch Lite, you don't have that capability. So even though you're spending less money on that, you might end up spending more money in the long run to replace it, to replace the Joy-Cons, to buy a new Nintendo Switch Lite, who knows? But that is one thing to keep in mind. So not an end all be all, but honestly, if you're looking at kind of comparing these two, you have that ability on the Switch of just replacing those Joy-Cons immediately, whereas on the Nintendo Switch Lite, you don't have that capability. Now the biggest difference between these is that obviously the Nintendo Switch Lite does not have the ability to go and connect to a TV in any way, and because this thing has USB Type-C, I thought you could honestly just go and connect it to like a Thunderbolt display or something like that and be able to display whatever on the screens, but that is not the case. You cannot go and show anything from your Nintendo Switch directly into a TV or directly into whatever. Whereas on the Nintendo Switch, the bigger one, we have the capability of doing that. We have the ability of not only handheld mode, but we have TV mode, we have tabletop mode, and all those cool little things. You can take those Joy-Cons off, kick that stand up, and then just be able to use it that way. Again, on the Nintendo Switch Lite, we do not have the capability, and that's honestly one of the bigger differences. If you're constantly going on trips and if you just care about a handheld console, you have that capability on the Nintendo Switch, and you don't necessarily need to spend the extra $100 on the Nintendo Switch, the bigger one, when you can get that on the Switch Lite. So it's really up to you. For my Nintendo Switch, I don't even remember where my dock is. I never really dock it up, so I usually just play it on handheld mode anyway. So I'm really perfectly fine with the Switch Lite, but it's totally up to you whether you like that or not. In terms of battery life, the battery life will actually be better on the Nintendo Switch Lite than over the Nintendo Switch, and it's funny that this is the case because you're spending more money on a Nintendo Switch, the bigger one, but the smaller one actually gives you a little bit more of an advantage here and there. And I saw this with the 3DS and 2DS lineup as well. The 3DS and 3DS XL honestly had the 3DS XL actually had pretty decent battery life, but the 2DS and 2DS XL, more so the 2DS XL in my opinion, had actually really, really good battery life for the device that it was having. So in my opinion, for sure, the Nintendo Switch Lite really has a humongous advantage when it comes down to it, which is really, really nice. So between both, obviously they have pretty decent battery life. They take USB Type-C, which is really nice, so they kind of future-proofed it that way, but the Switch Lite kind of has the capability of doing that. In terms of the game selection, both of them take the same exact type of games and same exact type of everything. I mean, one doesn't necessarily go and like outperform the other one in terms of the gaming. Any game that I ran on both of them ran perfectly fine. It's not like the Switch is faster or the Switch Lite is faster. They're both about the exact same performance and everything. They kind of glitch up at the same times too. So in terms of the the performance in the games, they support the same exact games. They support everything. Just the only slight thing is the Joy-Cons again. When you connect to if you want to play Super Smash Brothers or something like that, you can still buy Joy-Cons and connect it to a Switch Lite or whatever, but you cannot go and connect them back to the Switch or have them charged that way, if you know what I mean. You have to charge them some other way through the docking thing that usually those things come with. And again, it's not an end all be all, but that is something to consider. And for this day and age, if you're into something that wants to constantly play handheld games and you don't care about docking it up and you just usually play the games yourself, you don't do multiplayer games, so you don't have any friends like me, then Nintendo Switch Lite might be the better way to go. You're spending less money. It's kind of less of a hassle, to be honest, but also at the same time you have to consider the fact that if those Joy-Cons get messed up, you're going to be in a kind of a pickle because you're going to have to figure out, okay, do I go and spend more money on another Switch Lite? Should I just go get a Nintendo Switch, the bigger one, or should I just get those Joy-Cons and play it that way for a while? Like it's a weird thing for sure, and it might not be something that you guys are happy to hear, but that is something to consider. And I said the same things about the iPhone 6 Plus, if you guys remember that. When that phone was still fairly new, I was even recommending people not to buy it because of that bend gate issue, because those phones were being able to bend so easily. I pretty much said the same exact thing then that I'm saying now. The Joy-Cons on this thing, they could go bad, who knows, at any moment. On the regular Nintendo Switch, they might go bad at some point, but you can always replace them fairly easily for the most part. So between both, I will say if you have the money, definitely get the Nintendo Switch, the standard one. I definitely do like that one a little bit more than the Switch Lite, but I still think the Switch Lite has some more capability. The better battery life for sure. That is something that a lot of people are definitely going to use, and that is definitely a really, really cool feature. But other than that, I mean, there's a couple cool features here and there between them both, but I would probably end up picking up the bigger Nintendo Switch for the capability and features that it has over the standard Nintendo Switch Lite. So that pretty much covers it. If you guys have any other questions or anything, leave it down in the comment section below. If you guys want to buy either of these, they will be linked down in the description below as well. Hit the like button, but definitely hit that subscribe button. Every single subscriber that we get really does count, so it means so much if you guys could hit that. Also check out the other links down in the description as well. My Twitter, my Instagram, my second channel, all those links are linked down below. I'd really appreciate it if you guys could check it out. More importantly than everything else, I love every single one of you guys. Hopefully I'll catch you guys in the next video.